Welcome back to the Comedy Room. We're discussing comedy in all its forms. Just get us underway and we'll just give you a quick rundown of what we're going through in today's episode. So the year in focus is 1984, and our comedy icon that we're going to be looking at the work of is John Sullivan, the writer of Only Fools and Horses, alongside some other work that we'll be discussing in some more detail. And we'll also be looking back at the life and work of John Challis, who many of you will know as Boycie from Only Fools and Horses. Before we get started on our little section on 1984, we'd both like to just give everyone who's been supporting the podcast a massive, massive thank you. We get a little bit of information regarding how many downloads we've had and where they've come from. And we've been absolutely astonished. The feedback and the love for what we do has taken us both by surprise. Well, massively by surprise, it has to be said. And it's so heartening to know that people get as much sort of enjoyment out of this as we do. So a massive thank you from us.
Yeah, thanks all.
So without further ado, let's move on to our year in the spotlight, 1984.
Hello all, Spurzo here. Before we actually talk about the comedy programs, I'm just going to give you a few items of what else was in the world of media back in 1984. In television, we had Peter Davison regenerated into Colin Baker in Doctor Who, and Pat Phoenix left her role as Elsie Tanner in Coronation Street. And one of my favourite dramas of all time, the often mocked Prisoner Cell Block H, made its UK debut. In the world of film, it was a great year, with the top 5 box office smashes from around the world being Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Gremlins, The Karate Kid, and Police Academy. There's some fantastic films amongst them. In music, we had 1984 was the year of Band-Aid and Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And Wham, of course, were the biggest boy band of the time. And in the world of sport, 24 million of us tuned in to watch Torvill and Dean win gold in Sarajevo, skating to Ravel's Bolero. That's what's happened in 1984. And now hand you back to Andy, who's going to start the comedy rundown.
Thank you very much. So we had a mixture of shows that were making their debut in 1984. We had some famous ones and some not so famous shows making their debut as well. So we start off with Spitting Image. This was on ITV. They did 132 episodes through 18 series. It started in 84 and went through to 96. On a personal level, I don't remember much of Spitting Image. Obviously, I was 3 years old in 1984, so it wasn't really top of my televisual viewing. But having watched some of it in retrospect, it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's the kind of almost kind of alternative style of comedy and mocking politics of the day, which was groundbreaking. But in terms of the humor, a lot of it is mocking politicians that I'm not overly familiar with, or talking about events that I don't remember. And with a lot of political humor, it's kind of focused on exactly what has happened, that last week. And it might be quite a minor sort of story in kind of recent history. It's a lot like when you watch sort of Mock the Week on Dave, and you spend the first couple of minutes trying to work out exactly when it was and what was going on. So that to me was sort of Spitting Image. So that was the majority of shows that were debuted on ITV were from Thames. Spitting Image was Central, wasn't it?
I believe it was, yeah. Possibly ATV. Oh no, when did Central come in? Probably about right, yeah, because it was ATV then Central, but I think Spitting Image was fully Central.
Yeah, I think it was 2 that Central came in. Yeah, that was weird. Bit how I know that, I don't know. Been watching way too many kind of vintage ITV things on YouTube. Also, we had Me and My Girl, a very much a forgotten show about a guy and his daughter, which I believe that was Thames. But that was that the one with Tim Brooke Taylor?
Yeah, he was in it. Yeah, he was Richard O'Sullivan's boss or best friend or something.
Yeah, because this was Richard O'Sullivan post Robin's Nest, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, he was the big star of the day. He'd been in all sorts, and he'd been in Robin's Nest, the Flat Sharon one, and of course he was Dick Turpin.
Watching Me and My Girl, it's quite weird because I am most familiar with Richard O'Sullivan from Man About the House, where he's playing a student. And then this is only sort of a decade-ish later, and he seems to have aged a lot. They seem to have quite prematurely aged him quite a bit. I don't know if that was just that. Don't know if that was deliberate or not, but he did seem to age a lot in that period. Maybe they kind of made him into an older character because you had the star of the day, and you want to get him in whatever decent script you've got for him.
Yeah, because Joanne Ridley, who played his daughter Sam, she was as a teenager. So yeah, he'd probably be the character would probably be in his late 30s, early 40s, wouldn't he?
Yeah. But yeah, it's not really a show that gets mentioned a great deal, Me and My Girl. There was also Ever Decreasing Circles over on the BBC. That was Richard Bryars, and as an actor, I've got a lot of time for Richard Bryars. He's hilarious in anything you see him in. And Ever Decreasing Circles, obviously a show I didn't watch at the time. That ran from 84 to 89. They did 4 series of that. But it's well worth trying to find episodes of that to watch. It is well worth it. Fresh Fields.
Can I just pop in with a footnote on Ever Decreasing Circles?
Please do.
The listeners who might not know that the Penelope Wilton and Peter Egan characters, Anne and Paul, spoiler alert, didn't end up together. But Ricky Gervais loved this show. And he, in his afterlife, he's got both Peter Egan and Penelope Wilton in Afterlife, and he's written it so they're together. And he said on his Twitter that he'd done that because he's ended Ever Decreasing Circles how it should have been ended, with them two together.
So he's basically done sort of very sort of extensive and expensive fan fiction as such.
Basically, yeah. And he did say when Richard Bryars died, he did tweet the BBC and said, if you run Ever Decreasing Circles prime time, start to finish, one night or over a period of time, I'll let you have The Office repeats for free. And they turned him down.
Jeez, what were they thinking? Ever Decreasing Circles is brilliant. I'd tune in for that.
I've just rewatched the first series, and it's a little dated in places, but then you'd expect that from something that's almost 40 years old. But it was still funny. I laughed, and for a miserable old boy like myself to laugh nowadays,
you said it done
well.
You said it.
Yeah. No, and if it was on BBC now, I think people would enjoy it.
I think to sound very cliched, this sort of thing is exactly the sort of escape that people need, because there's a lot of people out there that aren't feeling too great. So something like that could actually just perk them up a little bit. So yeah, as we said, there was Fresh Fields, 84 to 86, 27 episodes, and then 19 episodes of French Fields, which was 89 to 91. That was Thames again. And the show that I thoroughly enjoyed the most was Duty Free. That was 22 episodes, 3 series from 84 to 86. It famously finishes with a Christmas special on Christmas Day 1986. Now, this was Keith Barron and Gwen Taylor as a married couple from Northampton, David and Amy Pierce, who go on holiday to Spain. Their first foreign holiday following David's redundancy. And they meet a couple that are much more wealthy than they are. And hilarity ensues as David is rather taken with the lady of the couple. Now, this was a show that I watched and absolutely loved. I've seen Gwen Taylor in quite a few things, and she plays the kind of characters where you wouldn't get the wrong side of her. I think it's fair to say.
Feisty, I think they describe that as nowadays, isn't it? Feisty.
Yeah, kind of headstrong, yes. I think it was, as a show, it was quite ahead of its time. The sets, well, I think they were optimistic, I think is the best way of putting it. Setting something in 1984 in Spain. Everything was actually filmed in Leeds, apart from the final episode where they're actually on location in Spain. And you can tell the hotel was completely different.
I think Yorkshire TV blew a full year's budget on that Christmas special.
Well, the thing is, it was such a popular show that who'd blame them?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a sort of show that is, as I've watched it recently for the first time and absolutely adored it. I thought it was brilliant. And the other couple of shows that we had, Tripper's Day, that ran for 6 episodes. It was one series. It was the last TV work of Leonard Rossiter. And it wasn't his best.
No.
And we also had Alas, Smith and Jones on the BBC. That was 62 episodes, 10 series from 84 to 98.
Yeah, I think that did not start on BBC Two and then become so popular they moved it to BBC One.
That does sound about right. But it was still sort of early days for alternative comedy. And Smith and Jones, obviously, two of the main sort of alternative comedians of that kind of era. But watching Smith and Jones, you can see where a lot of the kind of comedy sketch double acts kind of get their sort of influences from. So you see a lot of things like, you see an influence on like the Mary Whitehouse Experience. You see influences on things like Punt and Dennis, and then down to things like, you know, ensemble sketch shows like The Fast Show and Harry Enfield. You see a lot of that. A really, really funny show. And if any of you have not seen it, please, I beg you, go and watch it. You'll absolutely adore it. But we also have some sitcoms from Channel 4. So for those interested in TV history, you might not be aware, but Channel 4 started in 1982. And 1984, they brought out some sitcoms. Some were okay, and some were not that great. But you didn't grow up with Channel 4, really, did you?
No, not really. I wasn't allowed to watch it. It was I think I watched Brookside when it started, and my mum popped into the bedroom one night. I hadn't long had me little portable TV, black and white portable. I was watching Brookside, and they swore a lot in the early days of Brookside. So my mum said, "Oh, you're not watching that television program." And what's it on? So I told her. She said, "Oh, you're not watching that Channel 4." And I was only allowed to watch BBC One and ITV. BBC Two weren't. Yeah, BBC Two was still a bit risque as well. So, but I used to sneak a few odd things in when she fell asleep or they'd gone out. So I was a little bit naughty, and I still watched a little bit. But on the whole, it was BBC One and ITV for me. A little bit mainstream I was in them days.
To be fair, going off some of these sitcoms, you did not miss much at all. So the first one was a show called Dream Stuffing. Now, this show starts off with a great deal of promise on the basis that it has a theme tune sung by Kirsty MacColl. So, of course, you hear this theme tune, you think, great, this is going to be wonderful. They really should just have put the theme tune on loop, because I'm going to be completely honest, Dream Stuffing is the absolute biggest load of shite I have watched in years. I have never watched a worse sitcom in living memory. It was terrible. If I have to watch something that bad again, I'm just going to switch it off after 5 minutes, and that's going to be it. There's not going to be any more watched of that. It's very hard to get hold of episodes of Dream Stuffing, and my view of that, good. Next up, we have They Came From Somewhere Else. So anyone that knows me knows that there are a couple of things in comedy I absolutely adore. One of them being Mr. Bean, and another being the film Shaun of the Dead. So if you can imagine a zombie comedy co-written by Robin Driscoll, co-writer of Mr. Bean. Anyone who watches Mr. Bean will have seen Robin Driscoll countless times. He's basically every bit part actor in Mr. Bean. If you have a male bit part actor, I'd say at least half of those parts are played by Robin Driscoll. So this is somebody that's a huge, huge hero of mine. So when I found that he'd co-written a zombie comedy in my, in my very early life, I was very excited to watch it. It's a bit weird. The zombies cause people's heads to blow up. That's all I'm going to say on that one. And it does start very, very slowly. It literally looks like someone just being shown how to do their job. It's utterly, utterly bizarre. It has quite a cult following, but not from me. Then we move on to Chance in a Million. A very strange sort of show. It's kind of a mix between Some Others Do Have Them and most of the output of somebody like David Walliams. That is another strange one, but it was probably the pick of the bunch, possibly by default, as the other two were a bit crap. But it has there's a definite link between what David Walliams will do and having watched Chance in a Million. Fairly Secret Army came out, but I haven't been able to get hold of anything to do with that, unfortunately. A lot of the Channel 4 sort of comedies you can get very easily through All 4, which is Channel 4's on-demand service. But the 80s stuff is very difficult to get. They seem to start in that part of their history with Desmond's from 89 and then kind of move forward from there. But yeah, Channel 4 went on to become a great source of comedy but not in this part of the decade. It was definitely sort of later on when they had Desmond, whose lines it anyway, Drop the Dead Donkey. Definitely the other side of the 80s. So that's our retrospective for 1984. Now, having had such a terrible pick of years, our mystery year generator got a little bit of a kick. It was very nearly thrown out the window. So having had a little bit of kinetic force transfer, i.e. many kicks and threats to destroy completely, the random year generator has this time given us 1991, possibly in fear of its own existence. So in our next episode, we'll be looking at the comedy debuts of the year 1991. And next up, Verso is going to lead us through a retrospective of John Sullivan of Only Fools and Horses fame.
Yeah, John Sullivan. When we chose icons, I wanted to pick him because, we all know about Only Fools and Horses and how wonderful that is. So I'm not really going to talk much about that because there's other podcasts out there who are specifically Only Fools and Horses based. So we will mention a little bit of it, but the rest of it, I think we'll just gloss over Only Fools, not in any derogatory way, because it is one of my favourite comedies. But I think we all know about it, and there's other people out there doing a grand job by promoting it. So John Sullivan, he working class lad from London. He took a job with the BBC. I think he was a stagehand, moving scenery around, and he was writing scripts, and he got talking to a director and said that he'd written this script about a political guerrilla, I think, and that was Wolfie Smith, who's he developed Citizen Smith. That was his first one, and that ran for 30 episodes, and it had a great cast. That had Peter Vaughan, who is one of my favourite actors. He's wonderful in that, and it was Cheryl Hall, who played his girlfriend Shirley, who was his wife at the time, I believe. Did you know that, Andy?
I didn't actually. The only thing I knew about Citizen Smith was that it starred Robert Lindsay. I've seen a few episodes of it. It is a bit dated now, but I can sort of see that there was a lot of potential there. There was some really great actors and some really great writing. It's just I think that a lot of the kind of political ideology and the whole thing of people with that particular sort of that whole kind of premise, it was a bit sort of dated looking back over 40 years on, but that's inevitable, really, isn't it?
What Sullivan done there, it was a comedy about politics, but he was laughing at the extremism.
Yeah. That's the one thing that kind of that kind of holds it up, is that in today's light, is that it looks at the kind of the attitude that Wolfie has and the friends that kind of follow him round, and then they disappear at the first sign of trouble and just kind of leave him to deal with it all.
Yes, and whilst he was on Citizen Smith, he submitted several scripts to the two Ronnies. Unfortunately, you don't know which of the sketches were written by other people. If you watch the two Ronnies and it's like a sketch show, the credits obviously name who was the writers, but they don't say which bit. So we don't really know which parts of the two Ronnies were actual his. But he did write a good dozen or so sketches, and then he wanted to write another sitcom, and he went to the BBC, and he'd written a sitcom based at a football club, and they turned it down. And so he submitted the outline plot for Only Fools and Horses, and that was accepted. And he got the name. Little link to Citizen Smith. The second episode of series 3 was titled Only Fools and Horses, so that must have stuck in his head for when he developed his second sitcom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and say the next one was Only Fools and Horses, and as I said, we all know about Only Fools and Horses, and there's other podcasts out there, so I'll leave them to it. But before I go on to the rest, I think it's an ideal time just to mention John Challis.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we're at the point now where we'd met him in Only Fools and Horses, but we'd previously met him. He played a chief inspector in one episode of Citizen Smith. John Challis sadly passed away earlier on this year being 2021. And he had quite an extensive CV. He did appear in 3 things written by John Sullivan, Only Fools and Horses, actually 4, because Only Fools and Horses and the spin-off Green Green Grass, and he was in Citizen Smith, and he played 2 characters in a sitcom we'll be mentioning shortly called Sitting Pretty. But he's been in all sorts of things. He never really, apart from Green Green Grass, he never really played the lead. But he was in an awful lot of things. He, 1 or 2 episodes here, there, and everywhere. And his IMDb is quite extensive. And I think he'll always be known as Boycie. I mean, he even his Twitter handle was even Boycie, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think he realised that Boycie was his main acting job, and he embraced it. Now, some actors don't, do they? They I'm not interested in that. That's a character past. I'm not interested anymore, and I want new characters. But no, he fully embraced Boycie, and he went to all sorts of conventions and Boycie, and done the laugh, and yeah, he took it on board, and he became Boycie. And I read some of the tributes, on Twitter, and people who said they'd met him said what a lovely man he was. And I can only go by what I've read on Twitter, because I never met the man, but he come across as somebody that seemed a real decent chap. And I think he because of Only Fools and Horses, he'll always remain in people's thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in my eyes, certainly, he kind of represents part of the sort of moral compass of Only Fools and Horses. And, people will talk about various episodes and various kind of key kind of comedy moments, but there was very much a serious side to it. And, you have the kind of backstory of Rodney being looked after by Del. And it's very much the story of a guy who is bringing up his younger brother, and in the absence of the parents, as they have sadly departed, he has to kind of guide his brother through. And, you have things like, this time next year we'll be millionaires, because that's the whole kind of rags to riches that dream that he has. But Boycie sort of shows him that it's not without its perils, because Boycie as a character is a horrible, horrible person. Yeah, and it kind of shows Del that you can have all the money and things like that, and all the kind of material success, but it isn't a sort of kind of ticket to popularity and kind of success as a person. You look at the show and everyone hates Boycie. They can't stand him. Whereas Del is kind of like a sort of cheeky chappy sort of thing. He's a bit of a kind of lovable rogue almost in comparison to Boycie, who's just horrible and nasty. And that's down to the way that John Challis played him. That he played him in such a convincing way that you hated what he would do and how he would act, but it was still funny to watch. The kind of
and towards the end, he became sort of lovable, didn't he? Even though we initially hated him, and we hated him for a long time, we suddenly sort of loved an episode when Boycie would pop up.
Yeah, it was sort of like a highlight just to see how he would deal with the situation at hand.
Yeah,
but it's an absolute tragic loss, and I know a lot of Only Fools and Horses fans that were particularly devastated at that news.
Yes, so that's our little tribute to John Challis. We'll just pop back to the list now, and whilst Only Fools and Horses was in, I think by about the second or third series of Only Fools and Horses, John created a sitcom where he'd go with a female lead. It was joint female and male, and because I did read in a I think it was an unauthorized biography, Cheryl Hall from Citizen Smith told John that she didn't think he could write for women very well. So he said to her, I'll prove that I can. And he wrote the sitcom Just Good Friends. And for those who have not watched Just Good Friends, I do urge you to find it and watch it, because it was really good. And it was one of the first outings where Sullivan would use pathos as well as the comedy. So you'd have the it weren't dark moments, but it wouldn't be just out and out comedy. The people became real because they had bad things happen to them as well as all the funny stuff. And this was Jan Francis and Paul Nicholas, who played former lovers. I think that, if I remember right, it started that they were going to get married and he jilted her, and then they got back together again. They bumped into each other again, and that's how it all panned out over 3 series. And I think it was 1986 was the final episode. So if I happen to spoil it, I think we're in an area where we can now. But if you don't want to know what happens, close your ears now. They end up getting married. So I enjoyed it. It was light. It was a light comedy with a few where you'd actually feel, you have to have some feeling as well, as well as the comedy. And again, Only Fools and Horses was going strength to strength, and Just Good Friends finished. And he wrote a comedy called Dear John. Are you familiar with that one, Andy? Dear John?
I've heard of it. I've not seen a great deal of it.
Yeah, it was. I think it only lasted 2 series. It was a singles club, and the Dear John was from the letters people would write to finish with their partner. Dear John, I'm dumping you. And so it was like a club where they'd a singles club, and they'd all sit around, and you had so many different diverse characters involved there. Was Pete? I think that Peter Blake. It was Peter Blake. He played the guy called Eric Morris, who had a persona where he was he dressed in the style of John. Remember John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, that white suit?
Oh yeah.
He'd turn up in this white suit and he'd pretend he was a ladies' man when in all reality he wasn't really. And a few people popped in and out. Sue Holderness appeared in it in a few episodes. She was the wife of one of the people who was in the group. I say it's been so many years since I've watched it, and I've struggled to find it to catch up. So a lot of this is memory. I could have gone down the route of opening up Wikipedia and just reading it off, but people can do it themselves, can't they? So we try and keep it a little bit real, where it's coming out of your head as we're talking. And yeah, she was in that. And Kevin Lloyd. Do you remember Kevin Lloyd? It ended up being Tosh Lines in The Bill.
Yes. Before I was majorly into my comedies, I was a bit of a Bill aficionado. So kind of late 80s, early 90s, The Bill is very much a specialist subject for me.
Tosh Lines is up there. He's probably one of my top 10 characters from The Bill. He played an ex-rock star. Unfortunately, I think it was only a one-off appearance, but he was absolutely fantastic in that. But that thing came to an end after 2 series because it was snapped up by America.
Okay.
And, John Sullivan popped off to America for a year or so, and he worked as a consultant on the remake. And that ran for 60 odd episodes when there was only 14 episodes of the UK series, but there's 60 plus in American. And again, hard to find. I've not been able to trace any. I've not seen one episode of that. I don't know, and there's not a great deal on the internet about it. But his involvement, all I've seen is that he was a consultant. So I don't know how much input he had, and I don't know if it's like some American remakes where they use the British scripts, like The Office did, didn't it? The Office used some of the British scripts before they found their own path, and the American, for me, it surpassed the British version. Shameless. I think that the first series it was verbatim, word for word of the British, and then they found their own writers and found their own feet, and it became better than the UK version. So I don't know much about the US version of Dear John.
It had Judd Hirsch in it, from what I remember.
Okay, what else has he been in? Refresh my memory.
He was in Taxi.
Of course he was, yes. Yeah.
So yeah, he's in quite a few films, but sitcom wise, it's Taxi that we know him for.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not one guy. Well, it was one of the main things he did, sort of post Taxi.
Yes, and next from the pen of John was a program called Sitting Pretty. That was very much a little bit of Only Fools and Horses-esque about it, where it was another female lead. It was Diane Ball.
Okay.
She was in it, and she was rich. She had a millionaire husband, but he died, and he'd frittered all the money away, so there was actually no money. So she had to return back to her parents, live with her mum and dad and her sister on a farm. And yeah, it wasn't great. I don't know how it went to 2 series, because the series 1 wasn't the best. For me, it's probably John Sullivan's poorest series. And I say it was too, it was too similar to Only Fools and Horses, but with female characters rather than male, where she lived with her sister and the mother. And so it was that sort of poor generational thing, but we'd already seen it on Only Fools and Horses, so it wasn't breaking new ground. And so whilst it was great that there was programs with female leads, it's just a rehash of what there already was. It didn't create something new for her. It was it was probably best left alone, that one. But it comes up, the comedy aficionados might have a different opinion. They might think it's brilliant. That's a good thing, isn't it? Because we've all got different opinions.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
And again, Only Fools and Horses was dipping in and out. It was some series with there was 2 or 3 years in between them, but he was still churning Only Fools and Horses out, but doing other things as well. And one, it was probably comedy drama. I think if you're going to stick a genre on it, probably comedy drama. And that was Roger Roger, where that was the fabulous Robert Dawes. I think he's brilliant. He plays that stuck up hoity-toity with ease. And Keith Allen was his oppo in that. Do you remember that? It's set in the taxi firm.
I remember it being on, but I don't remember a huge amount about it because the time it was on kind of coincided with me entering the world of work.
Yeah, in them days, as you say, if you didn't watch it, you missed out. Because I couldn't trust my parents to tape it for me because they'd tape something else over it if I hadn't watched it within a minute. So, but no, the pilot was in '96, and then it followed a series in '98. Series 2 was '99, and there was a 3 or 4 year gap between series 2 and series 3 for some reason. But they weren't a traditional sitcom. It was he stretched the episodes out to 50 minutes, like he did with later episodes of Only Fools and Horses, where it becomes a tad more. You can flesh out the characters. Yeah, so it's it's more of a drama, but with a heavy comedy element to it, and I enjoyed it. And if unfortunately it's not on, I've looked on iPlayer, it's not on iPlayer. It would be great if they made everything available again, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think as sort of time and technology progresses, we're going to see more and more things kind of pop up, and there's a limit to sort of how much sort of investment in space iPlayer is going to get, but things like that, and also the later Heartburn Hotel is one that I'm hoping to be able to get hold of, because that's our next one to look at, isn't it?
It is, yes. Just before I go on to that, there's I do like my little bits of trivia, and in Roger Roger, the Glenister brothers both appeared in it, Philip and Robert.
Okay.
They both appeared. Robert was in series 1, 2, and 3, and Philip was in 1, 2, and 3, and Robert just appeared as a guest artist in 3, but they didn't act together. They still, I don't think they still haven't acted together in anything. So even though they appeared in the same show, they didn't appear in any scenes together.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, it's just my little weird brain looking at things like that. I do like little things like that. But we'll move on to Heartburn Hotel. It was co-written with Steve Glover and starred I call him Dennis. It's not Dennis, is it? Tim Healy.
Tim Healy is so funny.
And Clive Russell.
Now this really is one that I need to kind of try and get hold of, isn't it? Because I don't think they released it on DVD, because I don't think it was seen as this sort of huge success, and it's my own sort of personal bugbear that BBC shows you'll either get all the releases or none of them. So you'll end up with some things that have been released every other year in new packaging, and other things where you look for years and years and years and you just can't find them ever. And I think Heartburn Hotel is one of the latter.
I do have it in my own personal collection, but it's very, very poor quality of old VHS. But it's a shame because, again, it's sort of, I'm just thinking about memory, and it was 1998, and 99, 2000. It was, so we're talking nearly quarter of a century ago, and it's yeah, and only having watched, I don't think I probably watched every episode, so I only watched a few of the episodes once.
Mm.
It's hard to remember, but I do remember vaguely with Tim Healy and Clive Russell. They were pals, weren't they? That had been in at war together. So I'd think possibly that time frame, probably the Falklands War, wasn't it? They were probably ex-Falklands War veterans, and opened a hotel together, and they never really got on. I think there was possibly one was left wing, one was right wing. If you know, that sort of polar opposites.
Mm.
If one said the sky was blue, the other one would say it was green.
Yeah, just kind of,
yeah,
just because they had literally no concepts of agreeing with each other.
Yeah, but throughout Sullivan's output, he worked with Tony Dow, Gareth Gwenlyn on nearly everything. The directors and producers, Ray Butt is another one that pops up all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So he had his team. So he knew what worked for him.
Yeah, Tony Dow went on to work on a show called Stella, which was a kind of comedy drama thing that Sky did.
Ruth Jones.
Yeah,
Ruth
Jones was the writer of that one, and I didn't see a great deal of that, but it was very much kind of at the peak of Gavin and Stacey. So obviously, when one of the stars goes off and does something else, it's very much kind of aimed at that sort of audience. And you're a big Gavin and Stacey fan, aren't you?
I am, yes. It is one of my favourites.
I absolutely adored the first series, and I don't remember watching the others, and I can't remember why. I think I watched a bit of it, and it just wasn't as good as the first series, in my opinion. So I just kind of left it behind. But
the wife and I liked it so much. When we went to Cardiff a few years ago for Doctor Who convention, we actually had a day trip to Barry Island and had photographs and all the spots on the beach. That was
okay.
Yeah, it was only down the road, so why not?
And following on from Heartburn Hotel, what was next? That was Green Grass, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And that was that ran for 4 years. Whilst John created it and wrote some of the episodes, it was I think it had a good seven or eight different writers. It went down the route of like American comedies where they had a pool of writers, and I think Darren Litton, who wrote Benidorm, I think he wrote 2 or 3 episodes.
Interestingly, as well, one of the other writers was Jim Sullivan.
That's right, John's boy.
Yes, and it's also worth mentioning that Jim has actually done a fair bit of writing of his own, kind of continuing the family business as such, and he's actually been involved with the Only Fools and Horses musical.
That's right, with Paul Whitehouse.
Yes, and it's if you're going to write with anyone, then Paul Whitehouse is a very, very strong candidate. I've been a fan of him since the sort of Fast Show days.
Yeah, and didn't Jim write the sport relief, not or comic relief special with David Beckham?
The sport relief one, yes.
Yeah. It's a shame he didn't develop his writing more on that and do a bit more with Jason and Lyndhurst, because that might have been nice.
Yeah, the thing is, I think Nicholas Lyndhurst in particular he's had all sorts of projects and stuff that he's done sort of in that sort of intervening time, hasn't he?
Yeah.
But yeah, he's that's a whole other thing. I think he was doing around about that sort of time. He was working on After You've Gone, wasn't he? The with Celia Imrie and Danny Harmer.
Yes. The Green Grass didn't feature many Only Fools characters. Del Boy and Rodney appeared in one of the episodes of the last series, but only as flashbacks. Yeah, it wasn't new material, it was flashbacks. I believe off the top of my head, Paul Barber as Denzel, and the guy who played Sid. They popped up in an episode each. I think Denzel was actually in the first ever episode where he told Boycie that the Driscoll brothers had just come out of prison and they knew that he'd grassed them up, so hence why he had to disappear. So Denzel told Boycie the bad news about the Driscolls being released. And Sid's episode, he was actually in the Nag's Head.
Oh, okay.
So Sid took over the Nag's Head when Mike died, didn't he?
Yeah.
So there's a scene with Sid, and the Driscoll brothers appeared in 3 episodes. I think one of them they came looking, and I think the scene was where they'd shot his door down with a shotgun, but they never found him. And I think their second appearance did find him. They come to some agreement where Boycie then decided that he liked the countryside so much he'd stay.
Okay. It is a bit of a sort of who's who of British comedy in terms of the guest stars. Because obviously you've got David Jason and Nicholas Lyndhurst, as mentioned, but also Paula Wilcox turns up in it as well. And also we've got June Whitfield and Christopher Ryan of Young Ones fame.
Yes, he was not Danny. Danny was Roy Marsden. He was Tony Driscoll.
Yes.
And a little bit of trivia. Christopher Ryan's mother used to live in Felixstowe.
Really?
Where I'm recording from, yes. And my wife works in a clothes shop in the town centre, and she came home excitedly one day. She says, "I've seen that little man off the Young Ones in my shop." And I'm like, "You mean Mike the Cool Person?" She went, "Well, he's the little one." I went, "Yeah, that's Mike the Cool Person. That's Christopher Ryan." She went, "Yeah, he was in the shop buying some clothes for his mum, because I think she lived in a nursing home in Felixstowe." Yeah. So that's a totally bit of irrelevant trivia for people.
You got to take these claims to fame where you can find them.
I do that. I like to chuck in the odd thing that has totally no relevance to what we're talking about. Ricky Hatton was in it as well, wasn't he?
Is what, sorry?
Ricky Hatton appeared in Green Grass.
Yeah, Ricky Hatton was kind of at the peak of his fame round about then, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So he turned up, but it was. I think it's very telling that not many people from sort of Only Fools and Horses would actually appear in Green Grass. As I think Boycie managed to annoy, upset, or offend them all.
Yes, I've just had a flashback. Norm from Cheers was in an episode, or am I making it up? If any of our listeners can save me a popping on Google and just let us know if Norm from Cheers did appear in Green Grass, or I've had a flashback to something that didn't exist. That'd be great.
If any of our listeners could contact us and tell us that Verso has had a flashback to something that doesn't exist, even if it is true, just to wind him up, at Twitter at Comedy Room Pod. Hashtag Verso's lost his mind. Anybody wants to get that trending, please do. I would love to log onto Twitter one day and just see trending in the UK, Verso's lost his mind. That would be absolutely hilarious, just to wind up my co-host there.
So the final John Sullivan show we're going to discuss is Rock and Chips. It appeared in 2010, over 2011 for 3 episodes. Unfortunately, that was the last work that John did because of his untimely death. But the premise of Rock and Chips was, well, it was the prequel to Only Fools and Horses. It was Del Boy as a youngster living at home with his mum and dad. And fantastic cast. James Buckley was Del Boy. We had Kelly Bright and Sean Dingwell as the pair, and Phil Daniels was in it. Paula Wilcox, yet again. Yeah, did you like it, Andy?
I didn't see much at the time, but I've watched it since, and it does seem to answer a few sort of questions. It's slightly unusual in that there's cameos in it from people that played sort of existing characters.
Yeah, Nicholas Lyndhurst has his own father, Freddie the Frog Robdell. That's inspired, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing, is that there was such affection towards Only Fools from the cast. It's sort of expected that people are going to want to get involved with it, and to have Nicholas Lyndhurst playing his own father. And I remember James Buckley talking about sort of how honoured he was to be involved in it, because I believe it was some time around. I think it was a bit in between, like the In-Betweeners TV show and then the films.
Yes.
And I remember him saying that, he was, massively honoured to be involved in this, because obviously Only Fools being the big sort of show that it was obviously something you'd want to get involved with if you possibly could. And some of the co-stars in that, we're not talking small names here. Yes, so starring on the likes of Nicholas Lyndhurst and Phil Daniels. As a young lad as he was then, you'd snap hands off for that sort of opportunity, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's great people to feed off, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it helps the younger stars in that sort of situation to have these sort of famous faces, people that they actually recognize, to kind of almost kind of mentor them and kind of help them along.
And of course, it was one of the last TV. It wasn't his last, but it's one of the last of Mel Smith.
Yeah, because
he played the detective inspector.
Yes, because it was 2013 that Mel Smith unfortunately departed. Now, our next comedy legend certainly personifies that term. An actress and writer. Our next comedy legend is none other than Victoria Wood.
That's a great choice, and I'm going to watch all of Dinner Ladies back to back just to refresh my memory, because it's a long time since I've seen them.
You are in for such a treat. Dinner Ladies is an absolutely fantastic show. It's so funny. It's a bit of a trip down memory lane for me, as my parents are actually huge Victoria Wood fans, and very much still in the present tense, even though she's no longer with us. It's very much a case of she's an all-time favorite within my family. So a very kind of personal choice. And as we said, the mystery year next time round is 1991. So we've just got time just to go through sort of what we've been reading and enjoying recently. Verso, do you have any recent book recommendations?
Comedy wise, no. I've got Josh Widdicombe's book to read, but I haven't quite read it yet. But I believe you're well on the way, aren't you?
Yes, I've actually got the audiobook. I have a bit of a rule. If a comedian narrates their own, narrates their own audiobook, then I'm there, ready and waiting. It's sort of my commute audiobook of choice at the minute. It's all
Excellent.
about his love of 90s TV. So if ever there was a book written for me, then that would be it. He has a huge amount of love and affection for 90s sitcoms. So we may have to chance our arm to see if Mr. Widdicombe would pay our humble little discussions a visit. I think it would be somewhere the same sort of chance as winning the lottery, but
You
we
never
can
know.
hope. We can certainly hope, but definitely take a look at. It's called Watching Neighbours Twice a Day.
Now that's something I'd done and still do, even though it's only once a day now. But I'm still a big Neighbours aficionado, so I totally get where that title's come from.
As long as you're not watching your neighbours twice a day.
No, no, that'd be a little bit wrong.
Yeah, I think sticking to the events of Ramsey Street, no matter how implausible, might be the better idea there.
Yeah.
There are a few interesting books coming up, including Jack D has a new book coming out, and also Daisy May Cooper has got a book coming out as well, just in time for the impending festive season. I've managed to pre-order both of those as signed copies.
Lovely.
But yeah, definitely. If you get a chance to check those books out, please do. And also, there's a bit of a new show announcement imminently. The new series of Sandylands. Did you see that first time round?
No. Is it Johnny
Uh,
Vegas?
no, it was Sanjeev Bhaskar. He played an insurance fraudster that had faked his own death.
No, I missed that one by, I think.
Yeah, he basically he was an insurance fraudster, faked his own death, and then his daughter came back for his funeral, but he's still alive and hiding in the house. And David Williams is in there as well, playing a very strange B&B owner that's a neighbour that's a little too interested. It's on UK TV Play, I believe, on the catch-up service, the original series, and then Gold will be showing a new series imminently. Really funny show. It's a kind of almost kind of hidden away sort of gem of a show, but it's so funny. But that's definitely one to check out. And also, Sky are showing a new series of Nevermind the Buzzcocks, hosted by the legend that is Greg Davis. If you haven't heard our episode about the giant of comedy that is Greg Davis, then please check it out. We've done a little bit of a retrospective of his work to date, and Nevermind the Buzzcocks. If you see that the new series, you will not be disappointed, especially if you're a fan of the original BBC show. We've got Noel Fielding on there and Daisy Ray Cooper as team captains, and it's well worth checking that out.
Yeah, I've watched all three of the episodes so far, and I do like it. It's unfortunate in this world where we always have to compare,
Yeah,
and we shouldn't. We should just treat it for what it is.
yeah, definitely.
because it's fine. It's a new generation. It's never mind the Buzzcocks next generation. It does a job. It's if you don't take it too seriously and just sit and enjoy it. And of the 35 minutes it's on for, I'd say half that time there's some funny bits. Other times it's because there's a lot of younger people on it. I have absolutely no idea who they are, what they're talking about, because it's all the street slang. But I don't care because there's some funny bits. It makes me laugh. I'm coming across as really old, aren't I?
It makes a change for me to actually have heard of the people in the Identity Parade, because they used to have this was somebody who was in an obscure band in the 70s.
Yeah.
And whereas I think one of the previous Identity Parades had members of Blazing Squad. And I unfortunately do remember Blazing Squad.
Yeah, but there were about 500 people in that.
498.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to get the numbers right. But it's it is a really, really funny show and definitely worth checking out. I was a huge fan first time round, and then when it's come around again, it's certainly been one to watch. And also, if you like your humour, very slapstick, and you could do worse than checking out series 2 of the Goes Wrong show. I've seen the stage version and obviously the first series as well, and it's as funny as those. So if you like your kind of really sort of outlandish and slapstick comedy, then that is definitely one to watch.
Well, next on my agenda is both series of Ted Lasso. That's I saw a clip of it on Gogglebox. They were watching it on Gogglebox, and it's about a fictional football club whose owner dies and left to his wife, and she hated him and the club, and she wants it ruined. So she gets an American football coach to come over and be the new manager. And the little clips I saw on Gogglebox that looked promising, so I'm going to give that a go. I'm going to give a modern day 2021 comedy full works. I think we'll see how that goes.
We will be back with you on the 1st of November with our Victoria Wood episode. And in the meantime, if you do want to follow us on social media, you will find us on Twitter at Comedy Room Pod. But also, if you'd like to subscribe on your podcast service, if you want to leave a review, that would be very much appreciated. But until next time, we will see you then. And again, thank you very much for the support.
Yep. Thanks all. See you soon.